Jack Pennington walks along an old railway spur crossing his family property. The rails are rusty, but the tracks are still clearly intact. An old wooden sign reads, Pennington Siding, 1948. Jack studies the tracks, remembering his family's history. Months later, construction crews arrive next to Jack's property. A massive luxury neighborhood begins rising across the former farmland. Jack watches from his fence as expensive homes appear behind the trees. He notices the developers building dangerously close to his rail spur. The new HOA holds its first neighborhood meeting. Linda Carter proudly introduces herself as the HOA president. She promises residents that the community will become the most exclusive neighborhood in the county. Jack immediately notices the railway line on their development map. Jack approaches Linda after the meeting. He calmly explains that the railway spur is private property and still legally active. Linda dismisses his warning with a confident smile. She tells him the HOA has no plans to let an old railroad interfere with their community. Jack discovers construction stakes placed directly across the railway. A bulldozer is preparing the ground for a new entrance road. Jack photographs the location and checks his property documents. The old rail spur runs exactly where the HOA wants to build. Without waiting for permission, the HOA contractors begin covering the railway with asphalt. Jack watches as fresh black pavement spreads across the rails. The old tracks disappear beneath the new entrance road. Linda proudly watches from her luxury SUV. Jack refuses to argue with the workers. Instead, he carefully photographs the buried tracks and construction activity. He records the location of every railroad marker. His calm attitude makes Linda believe she has already won. Several weeks later, the HOA unveils its new entrance. Massive stone pillars and decorative gates stand directly over the buried rail spur. A sign proudly reads, Foxglove Crossing Estates. Linda celebrates with homeowners beneath the new entrank. Jack walks around the new entrance after dark. Near the landscaping, he discovers an old railroad marker still standing. The pavement covers the rails, but the legal marker remains untouched. Jack quietly realizes the HOA may have made a serious mistake. Jack returns home and opens his family's old property records. One document clearly identifies the private railway easement. The railroad siding has been part of the Pennington property since 1948. Jack finally understands exactly what the HOA paved over. Jack contacts the freight railroad company connected to the private spur. He provides them with the historical documentation. The railroad confirms that the siding remains registered and operational. Jack receives one important piece of information. A freight movement is scheduled. Jack informs Linda that the railroad spur remains legally active. Linda refuses to believe him. She insists the HOA owns the entrance road now. Jack simply tells her to check her records before the scheduled freight movement. Linda gathers the HOA board for an emergency meeting. She tells them Jack is trying to sabotage their luxury entrance. The board members become nervous when they hear about the railroad documents. Linda insists everything is under control. Early the next morning, a freight locomotive leaves the rail. Jack reviews the plan before construction begins. A new railroad warning sign is installed at the community entrance. Everyone entering Foxglove Crossing Estates must now respect the railway. Jack stands beside the sign with a quiet smile. The old family siding has finally been recognized. At the final HOA meeting, Linda sits silently before the board. The members officially review the construction failure. Jack's documentation becomes the key evidence in the dispute. The board votes to follow the original property boundaries from now on. At sunset, Jack walks beside the restored railway on his family's land. A freight train slowly passes in the distance. He looks at the old 1948 marker and smiles. The HOA finally learned one simple lesson. Property lines matter. If Jack was right to protect his private railway, hit like, subscribe for more HOA stories, and tell us, where are you watching from?